Hello dungeon visitor. In this video you will open Skyrim from an unexpected side. You will see a realistic life of a typical well-performing student of working class descent. No money, no energy, an omnipresent imposter syndrome, anxiety about the future, and no sex life. Not a trip and party college experience rich kids get, but a real
flash of the spanking,
consisting of studying hard, not sleeping enough, and side hustling. But how to create this experience? It all started with my desire to create an ultimate mod pack to roleplay as a dark wizard. That's why I prioritized the College of Winterhold, the Skyrim's professional association for mages. I tried to improve every aspect of it: visuals of the college itself, wizards who live there. More importantly, I added actual lessons to the college. The faculty will now share at least some of its magical knowledge with the students. To recreate this realistic life of student struggle, I added a hefty tuition fee that might easily ruin the budget of a low-level character. I even considered adding a mod with banks to Skyrim, so that it would be possible to take a loan to pay the tuition fee. This would have created an authentic American college experience. However, I ultimately decided against it, as Skyrim is basically a shithole in 4th era Elder Scrolls universe. This land is so poor that it would never have banks in medieval tech fantasy setting of Elder Scrolls. I also made the process of learning magic more akin to real-life research. Now the character needs to spend time with the books and write papers in order to learn new spells. Eating books constantly, as in vanilla Skyrim, is no longer an option. In all of my playthroughs of modded role-playing games, I follow a specific rule. If my character dies, then I am defeated. I delete all saves and I have to start over. Permanent death makes sure that when you roleplay your characters, you are capable of self-preservation. You do not take unnecessary risks and you act like a real person. You might be surprised, but I, the videogames, am an associated member of the College of Winterhold myself. I never studied there, but they sometimes need a specialist in mysticism magic, a school, sadly, almost forgotten in the 4th era, to find someone. Recently, they requested me to locate one of their students. He went out on an expedition without telling anyone at the college where exactly he was going, and he was absent for quite some time. To locate him, I needed his personal item. People at the college sent me his personal notebook. Let us go through this book together. If we understood the essence of his experience, then it would be easier to find him. I will now read the diary, interfering with my own comments from time to time. My past or current name is unimportant. I prefer the people to refer to me as the Boundweaver. Now that I'm in relative safety of the college, I finally have some breathing room. Up to this point, my life consisted of survival and acting after limited reflection. Now, however, I can start thinking about it. It is safe to say that I was finally able to start turning the misfortunes of my family around. My grandfather was a professional alchemist in the Western Reach, in High Rock. For some reason, he tried to set up a shop in Markarth, borrowing the money from the Nordic Silverblood clan. Almost immediately, the misfortunes of our family began. A blasted Nord drunkard killed my grandfather after he invested the money into construction of the alchemy shop. He did not have the time to prepare my parents to operate the whole alchemy lab, and soon my family went out of business. We all ended up being serf miners because of the debt to Silverblood clan. Here, with other unhappy local Bretons, we were forced to work with pickaxes day and night. We had no future, no freedom, and we were dying. I do not know a single serf worker who managed to last in Silverblood clan mining settlements without catching a nasty disease, suffering a mental degradation, or death. Beatings, verbal abuse, and overwork were the norm. I am the only one who remained alive from my whole family. There was one hope for us. Among the workers, there were tales about the lands of the north, the territory so backwards and empty that the mercenaries of Silverblood clan would not try to search for escaped serfs. But this was not the most powerful story. The strongest one was about the College of Winterhold, the only place in northern Tamriel where everyone, despite the past and social status, could learn magic. And one day I decided to run. My escape did not go well. The Silverblood mercenaries were following me closely. With their bows and arrows, they wounded me, and I collapsed to the ground. When I awoke, however, the mercenaries were gone, and there was a carriage with a dead Khajiit nearby. It appears that the mercenaries tried to carry me back to the mining settlement, but stumbled upon a Khajiit trader and decided to rob the trader instead, reporting me as dead to their superiors. The dumb greed of the Nords, which was the source of the suffering of my family, now was the sole reason of my rescue. Now that's an irony. I used the basic healing spell I learned through old familial magic scrolls to heal myself. I decided that my only shot at survival was heading north, to the swamps of Morthal, where the Silverblood clan would certainly not try to hunt me down. As I moved, I tried to evade contact with every Nord-looking character and everyone who was dressed like a guard. I moved around the road guard posts and tried to travel through the woods and grassland. I did not know a single destruction spell. My only option for self-defense was the familial spectral wolf summon spell that I learned back when I was a child. Every time I ran into dangerous wildlife, such as skeevers, wolves, or mud crabs, I summoned the spectral wolf to defend myself. It was clear that gathering plants was the only way of survival for me. I also manually caught some fish and insects in the small ponds I encountered. Entering the main economic centers of the province, like Solitude or Whiterun, was an obvious source of risk, as the Silverblood clan might still look for me. So I gathered plants, hoping that I would find a way to sell them when I arrived to the northern swamps. During my escape to the marshes, I was frequently attacked by wolves. In most cases, my summoned ghost wolf was enough, but one time a giant helped me. The giant hit the wolf with his club. To this day, I think that being hit by the giant might be a great alternative to the levitation magic. Perhaps the discovery of the giants is the real reason why the levitation magic was not around since the time of Nerevarine. Sometimes I think about recommending the priests of Mara or Stendar to introduce themselves to the giants. After being launched to the skies by giant clubs, they might be able to finally see the divines that they want to know so hard. It was dark in the town of Morthal when I arrived there. It was fortunate because I would attract less attention in the dark. The first thing I saw, however, was the group of Nords protesting near the door to the Jarl's longhouse. They said that they do not, quote, need any wizards in their midst. Of course they don't. The Nords' intolerance to outsiders, to high learning and arcane knowledge, is immensely strong. If they could, they would solve every single problem in the world with two-handed axe. Most of them met me with distrust. As a Breton, I was assumed to be ambitious and self-serving, so I caught a rudeness from the locals here and there. Mostly, I tried to be as unnoticeable as possible. The town also featured some unpleasant people wearing robes and hoods, and armed with maces. They called themselves Vigilants and told everyone around them not to communicate with the Daedra and to always stay in the light. These people would clearly disapprove my desire to learn the conjuration magic, so I tried to steer clear of these Vigilants as well. As I said, people like those really need an appointment with the Giants Club. Even the local inn was substandard. The room I rented there did not even have a door. As I slept, locals from the bar might have seen me sleeping. On top of that, Renting this abomination of a bedroom took almost all the money I managed to scramble from selling the ingredients I found out in the wilds. I swear, there were more privacy in the surf miner camp sometimes than here. Selling the unprocessed plants that I gathered ended up being a bad option. It would barely earn any money at all. The only work offered here was either working at the sawmill or becoming a mercenary and hunting bandits. As I never desired to risk my life as a fighter, and I did not want to degrade myself with unskilled manual labor again, I needed another option. And an option presented itself soon. There was a significant Red Guard community here, and they were quite open to interacting with me. I was especially glad to meet a master conjurer who was open to selling his research notes. I have also encountered an unexpected kindness from a woman who ran a small alchemy shop in the town. She allowed me to use her laboratory for a few hours every day. Thanks to this, I had an option to start creating potions and selling them. Hi, vIdeologue here again. Let us step away from the diary for a moment. Of course, the Boundweaver, as the author, decided not to describe the unpleasant details of becoming an alchemist. There is no way an escaped surf miner knew the properties of plants, insects and fish he acquired on his journey. The only option for him was to start sampling the ingredients, and by that I mean eating the ingredients. This guy had to eat the wings of the moth, the mountain flowers, and even the whole dragonflies. Like a vacationer in an all-inclusive resort, he had to taste everything he laid his eyes on. The Boundweaver goes into great details describing his journeys through the swamps of Morthal, which honestly can easily be summarized in several sentences. The Boundweaver entered an economic cycle of gathering plants, then brewing potions, then selling them, then buying research notes from Thalion the Master Conjurer, then learning the new spells, and gathering plants again. For some time it was clear for the Boundweaver what to do. He needed to study hard in order to have a shot in getting into the college. Alchemy financed his exam preparations. There were, however, limitations to what the Boundweaver could learn. In his diary, he mentions that he had enough natural talent to study conjuration and alteration right away. However, to learn destruction and illusion magic, he needed to go through special training. You see, in this mod pack, I mean reality, you need a minimum skill of 20 in the School of Magic before you could start learning the spells. Like in real life, you will need to learn the basics before you can use the skill. The Boundweaver still had to risk his life on the journeys to the swamp. He had to defend himself against the aggressive wildlife, predominantly giant frost spiders and mud crabs. However, for a short period of time, his life had a measure of peace and certainty. He knew what to do and why, and how. For the first time, there was a routine in his existence. All of that soon will change. Abruptly, his life will become a terror again. Let us follow the diary. My arcane studies were progressing swiftly. I was able to make my flesh as hard as a stone. In Morthal, I also learned a spell that can make me move with the speed of the wind. I also progressed with my understanding of the Daedra and conjuration. I could summon the Flame Atronach and the Temple Grim, which is a black dog-like demonic creature. My potion brewing abilities allowed me to earn enough money to pay for following scholarly notes and for my meager lifestyle. I was able to become less paranoid about being watched while I sleep, because I learned a spell that allowed me to detect living beings through the walls. I knew that if I kept going like this, soon I will finally be ready to pass an exam at the College of Winterhold. One trip to the swamp, however, changed everything. It should have been a typical ingredient gathering run. But as I scoured one of the hills on the western border of the swamp, my summoned Templegrim smelled something and rushed forward. I followed quietly and saw that my Templegrim started fighting a figure dressed in black. Since I had the high ground, it did not matter how many younglings this dark warrior killed before. The hooded swordsman was doomed. My Templegrim was strong enough to kill the dark figure without any interruption on my part. What a joke of a fighter this guy was. As I searched through the body of an Argonian, I found a note on his body that stated that the Dark Brotherhood wanted me dead. I was completely shocked. Who on earth might have wanted me dead? I was a simple alchemist who lived in the swamp near the end of the world. There was and is the only one possible answer to that question. The superiors of the mercenaries at Silver Blood clan were not satisfied by the answer their subordinates gave them. They likely asked for a body or another proof of my death. And when the mercenaries returned to the road where they left me for dead, they found nothing. And since then, I think, the Silver Blood clan is using any means necessary to track me down and kill me. This is why they hired the Dark Brotherhood. I thought that the only way I could survive the attention from a ruthless assassin organization was to join the College of Winterhold. I had no idea whether or not I was ready to join the school, but now I had to try and join. I was almost certain that I would fail the exam, as there was no way an organization of such mystique and dedication to the arcane would accept a novice mage who only had a few weeks to study. Still, the college was my only hope at survival. Everyone who ever heard about it knows that the college exists in separation from the rest of the world. The entry is denied to anyone but members, and it's a damn fortress. Right after my unexpected battle with the assassin, I rushed to Morthal, grew potions in the shop, and took the boat to Winterhold immediately. I knew I could not stay in one place for long, and I certainly could not spend the whole night in the Morthal's local inn. When I stepped out of the boat and first saw the college, I could barely see anything. It was very dark outside, and I had no option but to stay at the local inn to wait through the night. After a very unpleasant night of constant fear for my life and barely getting some sleep, I walked out of the inn. When I stepped to the street, I was finally able to see the college for the first time. I never saw a building like that in my whole life. It was incredible. Its walls were sturdy but elegant. These walls simply radiated safety. Near the entrance to the college, a high elf stood. Feralda, an instructor in destruction magic, was the one who decided whether or not to accept a person into the college. I felt excitement and fear at the same time, and I wanted to jump into the test to finally get to know whether or not I am worthy. But something completely unexpected happened. Feralda told me that I need to pay 3,000 gold to simply be allowed to take a test. I remember how crushed I felt on this day. Now I had to face the world alone, always endangered by the possible arrival of the Dark Brotherhood assassins. For the first time since my escape, I genuinely had no idea what to do. I was almost completely disheartened. It seemed that I would have to keep living without a protection, at least for some time. In the end, all I knew was that I should not stay in one place for more than one night. I walked to the carriage that stood near the inn, and picked a town of Dawnstar as my next destination. Since Dawnstar was in the isolated north, it seemed a safe option. As I walked out of my carriage, I walked around the town a bit. I found an alchemy shop where I sold some of my potions. After that, I decided to stop at a local inn to have a bit of rest. There was some kind of problem with nightmares that the locals had. A priest of Mara was present in the inn. He sought help in dealing with these nightmares. Why would I bother? Why would he bother? There is nothing he or I could gain from fighting the nightmares of people of Dawnstar. So I decided to leave soon, fearing of nightmares' influence on myself and, of course, fearing potential Dark Brotherhood assassins. Overall, travel to the Dawnstar did not get me anywhere. In order to survive, I needed to somehow collect enough money to try and get into the College of Winterhold. I knew that sooner or later the assassins would find me. It was also clear to me that I could fail during the exam after paying the fee, and it would mean that I am doomed, because there was no other option to find safety and future for me. As always, my money-making strategy relied on finding ingredients and brewing potions. The real problem was that I no longer had access to any laboratory to work in. So I came up with a different plan. I traveled around the unknown villages of Skyrim, where it would be harder for assassins to track me. I walked around these villages, gathering ingredients. Then, when I acquired enough, I decided to swiftly get into one of the Skyrim's major cities in order to find the laboratory. I decided to go to Riften, because this city was the farthest from Markarth, the center of the suffering of my family and of the Silverblood clan. When I traveled to Riften, I finally experienced the luck that I needed so much. Not only did I manage to find an alchemical shop with a free lab and a trader who agreed to buy my potions, but I also met a local noblewoman who wanted to become an alchemist herself. Her name was Ingun. Since, like all nobles, she was too lazy to go and gather ingredients herself, she agreed to pay a hefty sum for a part of my supplies that I did not need. And, like that, just in a several hours of visit to Riften, I managed to gain all the money I needed to try and get access to the College of Winterhold.
Nice.
There were many frightening episodes on my journeys. However, this moment was the most frightening of them all, even in comparison with encountering the assassin. I needed to travel to Winterhold, a town where people already saw me, and it meant that there was a risk of an assassin ambush. After taking an already significant risk of visiting Winterhold, I also needed to go and pay Feralda 3,000 gold in order to take the test that I could fail and be exposed to blasted assassins forever. If I failed, that would mean an almost certain death for me. I suppressed my thoughts as I traveled to Winterhold on the carriage. I knew that what I was doing was right, and tried to simply focus on the moment. When I arrived and resumed my conversation with Feralda, she accepted my money and asked which school of magic I preferred the most. I remember answering conjuration, as the ability to have other beings fight for you is the best thing a mage can ever have. What happened then completely shocked me. Feralda said that the exam for a conjuration-focused mage is summoning a flame atronach. Really? That's it? The first spell I've ever learned? Back then, I could not believe my luck. I thought to myself that other apprentices probably got harder questions on entry exam, and that some of them are probably much better wizards than me. I knew that I would need to work really hard in order to surpass them all, and in order to compensate my sheer luck. That was the only reason why I got into the College of Winterhold. But, anyway, I entered the college as a student. I was finally able to remove my horrible commoner garment I found on a corpse in the swamp. Instead, I started to wear the college robes, a symbol of the organization. The master wizard, Mirabelle, showed me around the college. I've never seen interiors so pretty and well organized as those in college. The room assigned to me was filled with noble-grade furniture and provided me with comforts I never had.
It's free real estate.
First time in its walls, I felt a sense of eternal peace. The college seemed like a place where you can do research without any disturbances of the outside world. Well, the outside world part was true. Later, I learned that it was the inside world of college that produced disturbances and suffering for those who live there. I also had some time to introduce myself to the members of my cohort. I can't say I was happy with either of them. Let's start with the least annoying of them, the Nord guy called Onmund. He went against the will of his family to get into the college, so at least he earned his place himself. But he is a Nord, and that means he, at least at some level, profited from exploitation of my family and the Bretons of the Reach, my people. Unlike me, he is a part of the god-forsaken province that surrounds the college, and I could never fully forget about this while talking to Onmund. Other than that, and his apparent lack of magical talents, he is alright. Jazargo, the Hajit, is the one I would never be able to trust. He is ambitious, like myself, and the first thing he ever asked me if I knew expert destruction spells. Not who I am, how do I feel, but if I am able to compete with him. People like Jazargo are always the first to backstab you, but at least he is determined, I give him that. He is also a destruction-focused mage, which means that he likes taking stupid risks and ignoring planning. A wizard like that is almost guaranteed an early death. From the very first day, however, Brulina Marion seemed the most annoying of them for me. According to her own words, her parents
reserved a spot for me here at the college on the day I was born.
This means she never needed to earn her place in the world of magic. She was given everything on a silver plate. Now, she walks around the college, telling everyone how she wants to be free of her family's expectations.
So far, if only because no one is telling me how great I ought to be.
If she truly wanted to be free of anyone's expectations, she should have walked her own path, and she should have refused accepting the opportunities given to her by parents. Instead, she whines and plays at rebellion while accepting everything her noble family gave to her. Typical rich kids. After the first entry class on wards, the most useless form of magic if you ask me, the professor assigned to my cohort, Tolfdir, told me that I will need to complete a 7-part course for all apprentices that needs to make sure that we are functioning scholars and wizards who know a thing or two in each subfield of magic. Back then, I felt excited. Finally, someone will share the knowledge with me for free. During the first lesson on the alteration magic, I received an assignment to learn water breathing spell. Something useful, even though I was a little saddened that the spell was too situational and cheap. The fun things began later. The instructor told me to report to the local researcher of Dwemer artifacts, who wanted me to follow him to the north, out of the college. I did not want to go out of the college in the first place, but still I followed. And then this wonderful person asked me to dive into the frozen water of the Sea of Ghosts. The college didn't even provide me with warmth spell to be freezing less. I could have died from cold on that dive if I did not have enough healing and stamina potions with me. That bastard Dwemerologist wanted me to find a crystal for him, on the bottom of the sea, no less. When I finally found that crystal, it was corroded, so it was useless. I jumped into the water for nothing. He waited near the campfire on the shore while I was risking my life jumping on the ice and diving. While I was jumping on the ice, I've spotted a cave and a boat nearby. I decided to check it out, primarily to make the Dwemerologist wait for me and feel at least the portion of the cold I was going to suffer because of him. I sneaked inside the cave, slowly, scanning its tunnels with my live detection spell. Inside, I spotted a scholar who seemed harmless. In front of him, there was a big Dwemer cube. I spoke to him. His name was Septimus, and he looked like he lost his mind. He was blubbering about how he needed an elder scroll to access the heart of a god hidden inside the Dwemer box. I spent quite a lot of time with him, trying to figure out if he was completely insane. I wanted to understand if the Dwemer box was genuine, and I also wanted to understand what hides inside.
Metal boxes!
Since I spent almost all my life in the Reach, I was used to seeing Dwemer structures, so the box was clearly real. However, I did not know what to think about the whole Heart of God story and his directions to Elder Scroll. Later, back in the college, I've learned that Septimus is a member and a known scholar of Dwemer antiquities. This led me to believe that his story is most likely true, and that I could stop thinking about cubes and blocks and take his story as at least partially legit. This meant that I could, when I'm ready, go out and try to claim the Heart of God for myself. But back then, I've had that retard Enniel waiting for his blasted corroded crystal. When I walked out of Septimus' cave, it was dark. I jumped between the ice sheets and handed over the damn thing to the scholar. A long walk in the darkness awaited us. I still remember how scary it was, and how disappointed I felt. Why? Why would college send its newly admitted students to swim in the near-frozen water? When I arrived at the college, I was so cold that my whole body was covered in hoarfrost. I wanted to buy something to drink in the canteen, but I barely had any money for this. The only things edible on me were the jugs of cold milk, some cabbages, and some raw food I could never cook, because I couldn't even afford salt. I was really salty, however, about my situation. I told Tolfdir about my success with water breathing, and he told me to proceed with other courses. While at the bar, I met two other instructors, and both of them offered training in the subjects I favored. Travis Snelleran, the illusion expert, did offer me a new spell, the weakest curse that allowed me to force creatures to attack each other. But I could not start my training yet. I needed to pay Travis a lot of money to get the basic grasp of the concepts behind illusion spellcasting. The conjuration expert was the one who truly disappointed me with the course he offered. He offered me to study a spell that I already knew from the very beginning, the spell of summoning a spectral wolf. The lesson he offered was even worse. He requested me to summon the wolf in front of him with one purpose only, so that he could defeat it with his Frost Atronach. When I asked him to teach me the Frost Atronach spell, he refused. Such is the generosity of the college conjuration instructor. All he did in his lesson was to humiliate his own student, and that's all. No skills, no spells, nothing. Just humiliation. Meanwhile, my stock of ingredients for brewing potions was running incredibly low. This meant that I could barely afford new books to study. The few money I had, I spent on basic illusion course. Even the beginner level lessons were so expensive that a person from outside the college would probably have a heart attack looking at these. One of the
Very few places where you can receive a real education in the schools of magic.
Huh? I bet Berlina says that because she is of an aristocratic descent, born with a silver spoon in her mouth. I'm certain that, for her, paying for the lessons she needs is not a big deal. I swear I really hate the people who rely on privileges of birth. But I knew that I will beat them. I knew that because the fire in my soul will always burn brighter than the meager sparks of my classmates. I pushed forward and studied, no matter how tiring it got, or how hungry I was. To persevere, I started a part-time job of sorts. Once in a while, Travis Snelleran needed someone to clean the focal points of energy at the college. This quest was a hidden gem because it gave me soul gems. While living at the college, I've cleaned more focal points than the amount of meat bottles an average Nord cleans weekly. Thanks to the soul gems I found while clearing the focal points, I was able to start learning enchanting to try and supplement the reduction in alchemical income. Sergius Tyrannus, college's expert on the craft, was never friendly. he did not offer me any free lessons. He just gave me the dusty textbook he wrote and, like many instructors, decided to exploit the student's labor, asking me to fulfill a contract for him in exchange for a passing grade. On my own, I learned a spell that allowed me to capture souls. Of course, I paid for it. Nothing goes for free in the College of Winterhold. But now I had problem of not having a source of souls. I had only one idea. I still feel ashamed for what I did during these days, and I will never do it again. I used my summoned creatures to attack harmless, peaceful workers on the coast, who never did anything bad to me. I felt horrible watching my temple grims fighting the lazy shoreline creatures, so this was the only time I ever did that. Still, thanks to this, I was able to progress in my studies, and soon I finally completed the basic training I needed to learn illusion spells. Hello again, vIdeologue here. You know, something's off with this story. After joining the college, this guy did not leave Winterhold for a really long time. This means that he did not get new ingredients, which means no potions and no money. The petty Horker souls he got from the coast do not cost a lot. Every wizard knows that. So I'm absolutely sure that this guy was doing something else to fund his studies. Judging by his love for illusion magic, I would bet my money on theft. I am sure a couple of coin purses, gems, and other precious items disappeared from the few traders who work in Winterhold. But let's see what the Boundweaver says for himself. You know, I was never a fan of restoration magic. The idea of returning the body to the original state intended by the gods never appealed to me. I always wanted to transcend the borders set by the divines, not to enforce them. So, when our restoration lecturer shouted to me that, quote,
"Restoration is a perfectly valid school of magic, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise."
I agreed,
Excellent.
but I honestly never cared much about it. The instructor offered me to learn the spell that would help me to turn weak undead. To test my new knowledge, the college sent me to dark and scary dungeon under the academy. Honestly, it was hard to complain about the college risking lives of the students at that point. Sending an apprentice to deal with the undead in the creepy basement. What a brilliant idea! I could rely on summons to protect me. The restoration spell, indeed, worked on Draugr. Then, however, everything went downhill. The second Draugr was hidden behind the locked door I could not open. I had to go back and buy some lockpicks. The next time I opened the door, but the Draugr started to run away further, into the frozen passages of the Midden. I've heard all kinds of weird sounds from there. I knew that my temple grim found some other creature further down. I've summoned the flame Atronach, and I was ready to run if the Atronach gets beaten before I could summon the new one. I retreated and summoned. I was scared for my life that day, but I could keep my distance away from the unseen enemies. Soon, the only sound I heard from the corridor was the hissing of yet another of my flame Atronachs. I checked the corridor and saw that the fight was won. When I returned from the Midden, I thought long and hard about risk. I never wanted to put my life on the line each time I needed to go out on the expedition to gather the materials I needed to become a better wizard. I suffered enough as a surf miner, and there will be no beatings in my life any longer. This is where I started to see that the most important aspect of magic that I will need to prioritize in the future is necromancy. I needed the undead servants to follow and fight for me, to guard me in dangerous situations, while I would be able to focus on research and strategy. The weapons, souls and ingredients I found during my fight in the college basement allowed me to resume my enchanting experiments and the alchemical work. I thought that finally I would have enough money to eat well and to continue my studies. But despite this success, I still managed to fuck up. I started to go out of the college walls for short visits to the inn to meet with traveling traders. There, I met a guy by the name of Video. I sold him some of my potions and all the new enchanted items I produced, including the sword that was intended for the client of the college that I made on official request. Lusanin was not very understanding when I wanted the sword back. He said that I would need to pay the new price he already assigned. I had to spend all the money I earned just to return the client's order. You know, it's a good thing I wrote down that blasted trader's name. One day he will repay me for such petty cheating with his soul. If he has one, of course. The situation was even worse, since the enchanting expert asked me to deliver the sword to the client in the Morthal region personally. This meant that I will need to travel back to Morthal, and traveling back to Morthal obviously meant risking my life, exposing myself to the assassins. Plus, as many of us know, in some universes, the work of a courier is a really dangerous one. Since I lost all my money to that blasted trader, I couldn't even afford food, or a safe carriage trip. I had to sell some of the potions I kept to myself in case of an attempt on my life. So now the risk of going back to Morthal would be even greater. Still, I needed to do this. A trip to Morthal promised to be beneficial. There I could finally restock on ingredients. I was far stronger than I ever was before getting into the college. I could trick minds, protect myself better, conceal my movements, and I had better control over my magical energy. I had far greater chances at defending myself. However, I needed to be cautious. I was cautious to the point that I decided not to sleep at all until I returned to the college, no matter how tired I am. When you sleep, you see, you can't be stabbed in the back. I turned around almost every minute. I scanned the land with my detect life spell to prevent any possible ambush. I reapplied the armor and movement speed spells almost indefinitely. I needed to be ready, always, in case I am attacked. When I finally made out to the client, it turned out that the whole order was a lie. So I wasted all my money and time and risked my life for nothing. This whole situation was an attempt of magically talented girl to attract attention to herself. She asked me to take her to the college. Of course I refused. There is no way a child is getting into the college for free on my recommendation when I suffered and risked my life countless times just to enter this academy. When she grows up, she should go through the same trials that I passed. So she should leave her mining town on her own volition, using her own talents, like I did. I left without letting her to follow me. As I went back to Morthal, I've stumbled upon a strange burial ground where skeletons roamed. I usually evaded places like this, but this one was small, so it certainly did not house any serious threat. My summons quickly dealt with the undead, and I started to search the area. I found a strange staff that reanimated the dead. It was called Staff of the Remnant. And this was a turning point. This was when I knew my time to study necromancy has come. I took the staff with myself, hoping to study it later. Sleepy and hungry, I managed to get back to Morthal and then take the boat to the college. My expedition to the Morthal region was a serious stress for me, so I've spent several days without ever going outside. I needed to immerse myself into one of the few unquestionably good things about the college, the peacefulness of the building itself. I frequented the library and I slept a lot. Still, the experience of successful trip meant that it was possible to go to the expeditions outside the college, especially if I found the way to improve my stealth through illusion magic. It meant that soon I might have gone out and surveyed the enigma of the drummer box, and learned to build my own revenants. To study necromancy, I needed a place of my own to conduct research. I finally gathered enough money to complete basic training in all schools of magic that I considered relevant, in illusion, conjuration, alteration, and destruction. I was finally able to hurl firebolts that Feralda offered to learn for free, and I also bought research for an ice spike spell and trained to use this as well. It would only be possible to conduct research in a quiet place, where no one would disturb me. The public college labs started to prove unsafe. There was an incident when a fire atronach got loose and started to hurl fireballs to the mages who visited the central experimentation hall. Videologue here again. The Boundweaver does not give us too many details on what he was doing next. However, his next note says that he was spotted in the college basement by a historian of college who was working in the Middendark. It means that the Boundweaver most likely sought a place in the Dark Midden to conduct his research in secret. It means that he, most likely, found some of the treasures of the Midden, such as the Atronach Forge, the regular crafting equipment, and unmentioned loot. I also bet that he gathered quite a lot of ingredients along the way. If he penetrated the Midden and went to the dark part of the college basement, he likely experienced some fighting there and survived. However, this is not the most fascinating discovery. Let us follow the text. There was a vampire down in the Midden. I fought her with everything I've got and prevailed. This was a close one. She seemed a powerful spellcaster, and I had to rely on my stealth and summoning fire atronachs to defeat her. From the papers she left in her lair, I've learned that she was once a college student who was expelled from the organization for some horrible crimes. An official letter from the college leadership mentioned that this vampire who I killed should be glad that the college did not rat her out to the vigilance of Stendar. This was simply unbelievable. The college professors often mentioned to me,
"The college will be here for you no matter what. We always look after our own."
but now, as I see in this letter, the college administrators actually considered reporting one of the mages at the college to the vigilance of fucking Stendar. This is simply atrocious. So, not only does the college risk the lives of students, giving them first lessons that could end in horrible death, but it also tolerates the existence of an organization which could proclaim whole areas of magic demonic perversions. Judging by the vampire's clothes, she was a highly skilled mage indeed. She had an adept tier robe and hood, which I immediately started to wear myself. She was hiding in an interesting place. I decided to use it and to set up my research benches. When I completed the survey that I planned, I disassembled the research materials and hid them until I returned from my expedition. I needed to spend a lot of time studying the stuff of Revenant. My goal was to reverse engineer it and compose a research book of my own, which would include all the properties of the spell that stuff has. I wanted to learn the ability to raise Revenants myself without relying on any magical item. So I spent quite a lot of time in my new temporary sanctuary, writing research notes. The research itself was not that hard. The real pain, however, was to gather all the necessary materials I needed to set up a functioning lab. I even had to travel to Dawnstar for a short time to buy some materials from a local smith. When I returned and started my research, I succeeded after several days of work. Now I was able to cast the Revenant spell from the staff myself. This was a major achievement. Along with my advances in the illusion magic that allowed me to enter the spectral form, which made me invulnerable to all forms of damage for a short time, this discovery marks the beginning of a new era for me. Now I can finally go on the expeditions I needed to do for a long time. I am leaving this diary here. If I do not ever return, and my room will eventually get searched by the faculty who might start looking for me, this diary will be the one source of my whole story. A story of a person who tried to change his life and succeeded. I hope this is not the end to my story, and I will be able to pick up this diary soon and to keep writing it. However, if it is the end and I will fall on my journeys, I hope the college will be able to learn something from my story and to become more loyal to its students and faculty. Videologue here again. As you can clearly see, the student here went on a typical spree, typical for the young mages who start to make real advancements in the knowledge. He internalized the Sigma grinder mindset, as he thought himself alone in this world. Nowhere in this book he mentions any friendships or positive feelings toward others. The life, as he describes it, was an eternal fight for him. Everyone was either a competition or an instrument to further his knowledge and power. Even though he is absolutely correct in pointing out the downsides of the college, if I were in his shoes, I would not write the downsides of the main organization of my life in the diary that I expected to be found. By the time he wrote this diary, this young edgelord thought to himself to be powerful enough to weather the dangers of the world, and started to take risks, despite being only an adept level magician in conjuration, illusion and alteration, and an apprentice level wizard at best in everything else. I might try to find him, but I'm not sure if it's worth the hassle. The college systematically fails in finding its lost students, so it seems that they really don't care that much about losing them. I guess the real reason they want to find him is because the Boundweaver mentions finding one of the college's lost researchers, Septimus. That's why they are so interested in finding the Boundweaver, and not the other students the college lost over time. You see, I don't really care about what the college wants. I care about what you, my viewers, want. If you want to see the continuation of this story, please write about that in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this new format, like the video, subscribe and stay around for the new stories and essays from Videological Dungeon.